Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report, and I have with me today my ever-present partner, Linda. Linda has been with me for 10 years in everything that I've done in this area in fishing, from the radio shows that I bring to you to the tournaments that we put on. She is there with me at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're out on the dark road parking cars to come into our area. So I thought it would be helpful if Linda could kind of lead me through some of the topics that we want to talk about this week. So Linda, now honey.
Yes. And, this is actually fun for me because, as I've told Don on so many occasions, I learn so much just by observation, by watching what he does and how he interacts with people. So today, we're going to pick a topic, and one that I find interesting is fidelity. So I don't understand how fidelity plays into the role of fishing, but perhaps you can enlighten me and your audience.
Well, I've been enlightened just for the first time. I was sent a report on fishing that my buddy Dave sent to me that he had discovered. It was a video that was put out, and it was entitled, "They Are Not Where You Think," and they're talking about largemouth bass. And this organization in Canada had put this study. They took 27 fish from this lake in Canada, and they caught them, and they put transmitters in them, and they wanted to study where these fish go. And really, Linda, that's one of the biggest things in fishing.
Wow.
Is for any angler to understand where the fish are. If you don't know where the fish are, you don't know where to fish. Mm-hmm. You talk about reading water and what the fish need and so forth. So this was a key thing that they wanted to study. Are these fish where we think they are? And they broke the year down into winter, spring, and summer. And they studied the migration of these fish that they had caught. And the word fidelity is, do they return to their same area that you caught them in? So this is what this whole study was about. And the results are incredible. They really give us a better idea of how we can find fish and where to look for them at the different seasons of the year. And in this lake, the one thing is, we have tournaments here all the time, and these fishermen travel 80 miles to catch fish someplace, maybe in another spot of the river, and they'll come all the way back to Meissner, and they do the weigh-ins. They take their 5 fish in their bag and weigh them to see if they qualify for prizes. Well, then these fish are returned to a release boat, and they take them out in the river and they release them back in. Mm-hmm. Well, do they start a new life? Do they find an area around here that they want to live in, or do they try to return where they were caught?
It would be interesting to think.
And that's fidelity.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find out if, in fact, they do return, but apparently
that's what this study with the transmitters enabled them to track, to be able to see where these fish go.
How interesting.
And these were largemouth bass that they were studying. Now, that's different than smallmouth. There are different species, and all the species have different habits. Mm-hmm. But what they found was that these fish, in fact, will always return to the point where they were caught, because that was their home.
So if they're properly cared for during the process of catch and release, they will automatically return.
Yes.
How interesting.
And here's what was really interesting. They also wanted to let people know, what do these fish really look for in their home? What type of structure is the most important thing to them? Mm-hmm. And they found that in the wintertime, that's when everybody goes ice fishing. But in the wintertime, these fish tend to cluster together. They're all found in the same part of the lake that they were experimenting with. And they prefer open, barren areas of structure where there's no weeds, where there's no rocks, no wood, nothing like that. And this was really interesting. That's where they stay in the winter, in these open areas. They don't want to be in the weeds. Oh. In the spring, when it's getting time to prepare for spawning, they do look for areas of weeds, but there's sparse weed areas that they can be found in. Mm. And here's the thing. In the summertime, they look for the thickest areas of weeds, and that's where they're going to make their new home. and usually it's in the same area that they were the year before. Each year they may prefer different type of thick weed areas, but that's where you can find them the most. And I thought this was a really fascinating study.
The fish world is fascinating.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really is. And the fact that they want to be with others like them.
Mm-hmm.
The clustering takes place the most in the winter, but these fish will still return to the same general areas that become little towns or villages for the bass at that time of the year.
That's interesting.
So now we all know. I didn't know that fidelity referred to largemouth bass.
That's very interesting.
So a new topic.
Yes.
Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner and Linda with the North Country Fishing Report.